so that you can, it's all about navigating with wonder and looking at beauty.
Before we get started, I want to say that I've referred so many teachers to your webpage for your remote, your distance learning resources. They have been blown away. I thank you so much for creating those. Those have been super helpful, and especially the most feedback I've gotten was on your accommodations and modifications checklist you have. That is wonderful. That is such a great resource. So thank you so much for creating those. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So thank you again. Thank you. I'm in Waco, Texas. Yes, sir. There you go. Oh, I don't know. That could be. That's about 90 miles from us.
Yeah, he's a superintendent in
right.
Texas now, though. I do know that. I do know that he's a superintendent in Texas now. So yeah, awesome.
And Maureen is asking if you can put your website of the remote distance learning resources in the chat. Sorry, I didn't mean to cause more work for you.
Oh no, that's what we're here for. We are here to support everyone who wants it.
I haven't eaten lunch yet, so I'm also gonna sneak a few bites of my lunch while I'm participating.
Look, we have to do what we have to do there.
It's
Okay.
Friday and it's been a long week. I
Oh
apologize.
no, Lisa, look, I love it that you are here. And I love it.
Thank
I
you.
just love
Well,
it.
I've been on your past too, so I'm lurking and I'm a big fan.
Okay, awesome, awesome, awesome. That's great. That's great. Well, you are going to love today's session. I'm going to tell you. You
Well,
know.
I've loved all of them, so you're not telling me nothing new. So.
Yes.
Okay, I'm gonna turn off my camera so I can sneak some bites of my lunch.
No problem. No problem. And good afternoon to you, Stacy. Thank you for being here as well. So that's awesome. That's an awesome way to kick things off today. I love it. I love it. All right. So, welcome everyone to the GEG Louisiana. This is our distance learning series. And I just want to make sure. All right. And so here we go. I want to send a shout out to, uh-oh, my computer is just lagging here. All right. Let's see if we can make this move. All right. So, uh-oh. Want to send a shout out to StreamYard because we are broadcasting to YouTube right now as well. And so, welcome everyone who is joining us on YouTube as well. So, we have some people here live in the Zoom, but then we also have people watching us via YouTube as well. I am Wiley Brazier the fifth, and I am the GEG Louisiana leader. All right, I am the GEG Louisiana leader here. I am a level one, level two certified educator and all of that. I'm a trainer and an certified admin, all of those different things. Okay, but enough about me with that. We also have, and she's not here today, but I still want to give her a huge shout out, Tyler Colson. Um, She's one of the captains here for GEG Louisiana, and she's usually here, but she's not here today. But that's okay. She's still with us in spirit, right? Okay. So the next thing is that on geglouisiana.com is our website, and someone, Lisa, gave a huge shout out, which I so much appreciate, that on my website we also have a variety of resources here. And so I'm going to drop that into the chat for everyone there. I'm going to put this one in. Matter of fact, I'll put those in just a moment for you, um, because we have a very special guest here today who is just phenomenally awesome. We have Miss Martine Brown is here today. And today she is going to talk to us about, or going to give us 5 tips for instructional coaches. Now, what I will also say is that Martine has recently written a book, and it is awesome. It is definitely something that you all will want to pick up, and I'm sure she's going to share all of that information of where you can also gain that information. Okay. And so at this time, I am going to stop sharing my screen, and I am going to throw it over to Martine. Make you the host. All right, so that you can share your screen. All right, and then you should have it now, Martine. Do you have it? All right, so she's going to go ahead and share her screen with us. And
all right, can you guys see my screen?
yes.
Awesome. So before we get started, I like the size of this group. Can you just hop in the chat and tell me just a little bit what your role is? So I'm curious to know, do we have instructional coaches primarily, or are you someone who supports instructional coaches? Maybe you provide PD for them. Maybe you supervise a team of instructional coaches. That'll kind of help guide our conversation. All right, cool. So we got district instructional coach. So I'm assuming that you probably do K through 12. Okay, I like this. You offer PD for everyone. Sounds like we have a campus-based coach that possibly does some work other places. Just make sure. Okay, great. So I'm going to divide my conversation just a little bit. So those of you that are coaches, you should be able to walk away with a few things that you can take and put into your practice, or really start thinking about how you want to put into your practice today. And then if you're a district level person who supports coaches, I've got some strategies for you guys as well, as you think about how you're going to have your coaches get the growth that they need. A big focus of this conversation is going to be how to do that remotely or in virtual environments. So I'm going to talk a little bit about what we did when we initially went remotely, and then my plans for how we're going to move forward. Again, I'm Martine Brown. If you have a Twitter, please follow me at Marty B edtech on Twitter. That is the best way to reach me. So we're going to go over virtual support, PD for coaches, coach self-evaluation, which really I'm saying, as a coach, how do I know I'm doing a good job? We're going to talk a little bit about coaching cycles, and then we're going to talk about growing your PLN. So that's going to be the main focus of this presentation. I am going to drop the link to the presentation in the chat, so you'll have it. And then I'm using a Genially today. That's just the presentation tool that I'm using. And at the top right-hand corner, you'll see this little finger. When you click on that finger, it tells you what items on each slide are interactives. All right, a little bit of background about me. This is my 15th year in education. I started off as an English, speech, and college and career teacher. Of course, I spent most of my time teaching English, and then I got special opportunities to teach the other contents. I'm an instructional coach at heart, and I currently work as a digital learning facilitator where I offer PD training and support K through 12. And my biggest project is leading a team of 7 high school level instructional coaches as they work to grow their teachers and make a positive impact on their teachers on their campuses. I am the author of 21 lessons of tech integration coaching, and I'll just throw this in. I hope it's okay, Wiley. If anybody tweets today using the GEG, hashtag Louisiana, or hashtag 21 lessons, I'll throw a book in the hat. So just make sure you tweet.
Yes, put both of those hashtags there. Hashtag GEG Louisiana and hashtag 21 lessons. Definitely.
Awesome. That's perfect. My biggest belief is simply this. I believe that we have to be student-centered, data-driven, and tech-ready. For me, that just means that everything I do, even though I'm not in the classroom anymore, is still centered around how can I help my students be the most powerful 30-year-old in 15 years, 40-year-old in 15 years. How can I ensure that they are academically, emotionally, and physically able to become the person they want to be? I think part of that lies in examining data and looking at how data can help us make the best decisions. And of course, I think the foundation of that is making sure that our students are tech ready. So it's just a little summary of my philosophy on how I view education. So let's jump right into our tips. So the first question that I really want to cover is, what does virtual PD look like? So prior to, at least in our community, and I know every community is different, but prior to the start of the pandemic, we hadn't offered PD for instructional coaches in a virtual environment. We usually met once a month, and we met every month, once a month, and we would provide PD. As a team, it was very important to us that we continue to offer monthly PD, even more so because there was so much change happening around us. We thought this was a good opportunity to continue to make sure that coaches were supported. So I want to show you a couple of things we did as far as providing some virtual PD for our coaches. So one of the things we wanted to do is we wanted to support our coaches and celebrate their wins. Now, I will say this. I'm big on confidentiality with my coaches and making sure they know when they build something, when they create something, that I'm not going to necessarily share it out, so that we can continue to have that trust and that bond with their work. So I built a lot of examples for you, but you won't see any actual coach work here, okay? But I do have examples for you when appropriate. So this first piece of PD we did, this was right maybe 3 weeks into remote learning in our school community. And so we did not want them to have this deep, heavily involved PD. We just wanted to introduce them to the idea that, hey, we're still going to do professional growth online. So here's what we did. The first thing we did is, let me go back. So we built this page, and within this page, there are several interactives, and they had several tasks that they needed to complete. The first thing that we did was we wanted them to really reflect on the last couple of weeks and come up with 3 moments that they felt that they could be proud of. You know, there was a lot of shifts, a lot of change, sometimes even negativity. I thought it was a good time to really focus on, like, what's going well? What are you proud of? What coaching partnerships are you most proud of? They then took that experience and they had to put it into a graphic. And so each coach had their own graphic. The next part of this training was an advice column. So we thought it was important to elevate our coaches' voice within our local school and international PLN. So each coach submitted their tip. And then as a district, we used our social media platforms to communicate those tips to our greater PLN. And this is just a way to remind them and lift them up that, hey, you are a leader, you are an influencer, and you do have something positive to share, and you're doing the work. The next thing we had them to do for this very first training, district, we required that every coach become a Google certified trainer. And so part of that training process is to keep track of any Google related trainings you provide. We didn't want our coaches to get so caught up in the work that they lost sight of that part of the process. And so we asked them to create a spreadsheet of 2 to 5 Google related trainings that they had completed. That way, towards the end of the year, as they were finalizing their trainer information and content, they didn't have to go back and think about it. They had been building the list all along. And then it just so happened that webinars were really popular and really the main go-to to support teachers during remote learning. And so we did provide them with several resources just to help them with creating really strong webinars. So this is the very first training. We kept it kind of light, just introducing them to this concept. So the second round, because remember we do this monthly, the second round of PD that I provided was a little more in depth. So we spent some time focusing on the coaching cycle and how to take the coaching cycles that we did face-to-face and move them into a virtual environment. But I really want to focus on, and let me open this up for you so you can see it. I really want to focus on the deeper content.
Martine, I have not used Genio before. It's my first time hearing of it.
It's an awesome tool. It's a really good way to do a nice microsite without having to move between tabs. It's an excellent tool. All right, so the second round of PD, we decided to go a little bit deeper. And so what we did was, or what I did was, I asked the coaches to choose 2 of the resources below. So this is where their instructions were listed, but they had 8 different types of resources they can pull from. They had videos they can watch, podcasts they can listen to, or audio, or articles that they can read. And so the idea was here was every piece of content that was curated for them had been created or put together within 15 to 20 days of them reviewing it. It was very important to me that because we are in such a unique situation, that we only looked at resources that connected to what was happening at that moment. And so that's one of my biggest tips. Like, if you're going to provide PD, really try to pull on resources and materials that are aligning with what's going on right now, so that it's more meaningful. And so they chose 2, and then we did a discussion in our Google Classroom. And these were the questions they had to answer. What's going well for you? Do you feel like you're on par with other thought leaders, other instructional coaches, the ones that they've listened to and or read about in the articles? What are some areas they want to improve in as an instructional coach? And then after they read all these resources, what really resonated with them the most? So within our discussion forum, they reviewed those questions and they responded to the questions that I listed, and then they had to respond to 2 other coaches. For my role and for my folks who provide PD, this gave me great insight into where they were as far as influencing their teachers in remote learning. It also gave me insight in where they felt their weaknesses are and where their strengths were. And so as we transitioned and closed out the year, I was then able to ask them to write goals based on this discussion forum. To be honest with you, when I'm doing traditional PD, this would have been a conversation we would have had during our PD time. But this was how we flipped it so that it would be an opportunity to have the deep conversations, but to do so virtually and to make it asynchronous. and I'm going to talk about this top part a little bit later. The last thing we did with this second PD, we were getting ready for TCA, which is our statewide convention. And so we wanted them to spend some time collaborating on potential topics and proposals. And so let's see, do I have it here? Yes. And so we used this shared Google Doc, and they actually plopped their ideas down. And so again, it gave us this is a conversation we would have had face-to-face. This is some planning we would have done face-to-face. But we decided to use this doc, and it comes from Digital textbook. So it is a template from Digital textbook to help them with that planning process. So we're still getting the work done. We're still having meaningful conversations, but they're doing it on their time. It's an asynchronous experience, and we can still reach our goals collectively. Don't slow down on me now. Okay, I'm gonna close out some windows just in case that may be causing me some problems. Okay, there we go. Another element I do want to talk about that you should have noticed is they had voice and choice. And because of how tight their schedules were, it was very important, and as often as we could, we allowed those experiences to be asynchronous where they can access it and really do the work when they need it, when it worked best for their schedules and their families. So that's some ideas for virtual PD. I'm gonna go ahead and move on to tip 2. One of the big questions that coaches have, especially when they're new coaches, how do I know I'm doing the right thing? How do I know my work is meaningful? Like, I'm busy, I'm helping a whole bunch of people, and I'm wore out. I know I'm doing work, but how do I know it's good work? And then how do other people know that I'm doing the work that I need to do? And so my answer to that is to use standards to guide your work. And so in our learning community, we use the ISTE standards for coaches as the baseline of everything we do. So if a coach wants to know if they're doing a good job, they refer to the standards and how well they're performing in each standard and its indicators. That's how they know whether or not they're on track or not. That's how they know what their weaknesses are and what their strengths are. So we started that process actually back in January. We started that process. And so we told them the justifications. We spent several of our face-to-face PD meetings exploring the standards. Side note, they've been updated. They were updated October 28th. So if you haven't looked at them in a while, the ISTE standards have been updated. So we looked at the new ISTE standards, spent a lot of PD time unpacking them, making sure that coaches understood what they meant and what they look like in the work. From there, we asked them to do a template where they would begin building their own portfolio. And I think it's very important that every coach has a strong portfolio that shows the nature of their work. We asked them to look at each standard, provide some evidence that they've met that standard or where they are in that standard. And so we gave them this outline to kind of get them to start brainstorming and thinking about that. And these are the new standards for coaches. Let me make sure I can do that. And then they're responsible for building their own portfolio. Now, I did provide a sample for you so you can get an idea of what that looks like. So I'm gonna just look at connected learner. And so I asked the coaches, like, just discuss how you feel your evidence is connected to that standard and indicator. And then at the end of their contextualization, it was really important that they spent time saying, here's where I am now, here's where I want to go next. This is another way to set that foundation for making concrete goals on how to improve based on the ISTE standards. So each coach has their own portfolio that they use. Now, it can also serve dual roles. Oftentimes, coaches are on campuses, they get new principals, they get new leadership. This is a great tool to be able to sit down and talk to those stakeholders about the work that they do, about why it's important, about why their schedule is set up that way. This is an excellent way to be able to tell their digital stories to others while also ensuring that they're doing the work that matters and that counts. So if you're a coach out there and you don't have an e-portfolio, I highly recommend that you start that process. It's just a great way to keep yourself honest and on track about the work that you're doing. So a big question that came up in the end of last year was, can we even coach virtually? Like right now, I'm just trying to help folks how to use X tool or this tool. You know, can I actually coach them online? And so I spent a lot of times coaching my coaches about absolutely, there are whole companies that have been doing this well before March. And so here's the model that we're going to use to help get us started. This year with the team that I worked with, everyone on the team was brand new. It was their first year. They had all 7 had left the classroom. So this was their first year as a coach. And so I'm a big believer that if you want to influence people, it's really not about what you do or what you do for them. It's about how you use your words to influence them. Because I can do all the work, but if I do all the work and then it messes up for the teacher, then I'm the problem, not them, right? So how can we help folks change their practice by giving them opportunities to own their learning, to own their experiences, and then guide them through that process? So we use this coaching cycle, but remember, my coaches started with language. We didn't necessarily start the year with the actual cycle. We started with, what do you say to people? How do you start a conversation? How do you close a conversation? We use 2 tools to do that. We use the coaching habit by Michael Bungus-Stainer. And he's got like 7 different habits that you can change, because remember, especially with first year coaches, they've got to remove that teacher mindset and those teacher communications and shift into adult learning and adult leadership and influence. So we used a lot of the sentences and the phrases just to get their feet wet with how to communicate in this environment. The second resource that we used was results coaching. They have a book and they offer PD. Our community, we did both. We did the book and we did the PD. I highly, 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 highly recommend results coaching for any school leader, principal, instructional coach, district level, PD facilitators, because this group does an excellent job of giving you time to practice the coaching, to role play, to model. They model and then they'll show you how those conversations can work. They give you a ton of sentence stems. So does the coaching habit book. Both give you sentence stems and sentence frames to help you begin the process of taking those frames and then moving it into your own natural dialogue. So they had all of that language experience. That's really what we focused on. So when we looked at this model, and let's say we were talking about the pre-conference, under not sure what to say, I listed all of the coaching frames that related, or coaching sentence frames that were related to everything we had learned this year. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, for copyright issues, I did not list them here. You'll need to go check out those resources. But in their copy of this document, everything, any possible scenarios of things you could say to kind of get the conversation going, they were listed here. And that's the same thing for training and development. Same thing for observation and co-teach. especially here, we talked a lot about preparing for that reflective feedback. What are you going to say? How are you going to say it? How are you going to communicate that reflective feedback? And then, of course, then leading in that actual meeting with that teacher. So this is just one way to think about what training have your coaches already had, and how can you meld that training into your coaching model to ensure that we're not trying to teach them something new. We're using the same models, but instead of meeting face to face, maybe it's a Google Hangout. Maybe they're going to hop into that Zoom meeting. Really fostering, like, you can still do this, just where you're doing it has changed. And we're going to lean on all of our past learning to do that. All right, let me close a few windows because I don't want this slowing down on me. So to answer questions for coaches, can virtual learning coaching occur? It absolutely can. You just got to get in the habit of doing it. All right, my fourth tip for coaches and for any district level personnel, we have to, if we want teachers to have good quality learning experiences with their students, then we got to model for them what that looks like in an online environment. And that's probably the most challenging part, because some of it, we're having to make it up as we go. We're having to really sit down and plan, okay, how can I take this face-to-face classroom strategy and then meld it into an online environment? That is our challenge as coaches or as district level personnel. If we're not doing that, we're going to have a hard time getting teachers to believe that this is possible. But I am going to tell you that it's 100% possible. So I'm going to show you a couple examples of some things that I did. We first went into kids were sitting face-to-face with their teacher to online. Of course, the biggest concern was classroom management. The biggest concern was how can we create a safe, open environment with students? That was a big question. And so in one of our first meetings, I created a setting the tone slide. That's essentially what it was. So about 10 minutes before a meeting began, I would put a slide up that looks just like this. I model this with my coaches. It has a note about muting your mic. That's something we want kids to do when they enter a virtual environment. But there's some other key elements I want to bring up. If you notice, there's like this bubbling spring that's happening. I would play music. I had a list of all of my coaches, like some of their favorite songs. I would put that playlist on. All of that is centered around setting that tone and setting that environment that is inviting for your kids and making those connections. Well, if we do it with coaches or with teachers, they then can push those same ideas into their own classrooms. And that's the whole goal there. So even though this doesn't seem like it might be a big thing, it actually really is. Because if you can get kids to feel a sense of calm, even though there may be chaos all around them, then they're more likely to keep showing up. So that's just something very small I did to kind of model. Here's what you want to do with your teachers when you meet with them. Here's what your teachers should do with your students, with their students when they work with them in an online environment. The second thing I did is I did not let go of the modeling the coaching language, because again, there was this concern, like, can we do that online? So I made a point to take my time and model how to have some bite-sized coaching conversations. So here's what I did. At the very end of the year, each coach had to give us a showcase of their portfolio. So we got on a Google Hangout, and each coach spent about 5 to 7 minutes sharing highlights, things that they were proud of, things they wanted to work on, all of that for 7 minutes. What you're looking at here is their PD checklist for that day. So this is like a checklist I would give them as far as what they need to do to prepare for PD. And so in this section, see, I'm not letting go of these question stems. I put all of the feedback question stems that they had learned this year, put it in that space. Their job, as they were listening to each person share their showcase, is they actually got on a Jamboard and they had to provide feedback using the coaching stems they had learned this year. So they did that. They would listen and they would type. Each person, they would give them feedback using the feedback questions that they had learned. On my end, after each coach finished talking, I had a coaching conversation with them, and I used the same sentence frames that I had given the coaches. I made them unique to me, made them more natural for me to help help the coaches see where their goals were, hone in on their goals, highlight the things they did well, and then help them really think about where they wanted to go next. So again, if the challenge is how do we coach virtually, then you have to model that process with them. And so the digital portfolio showcase was a great opportunity to do that. I was able to have those feedback conversations with each coach, and they walked away, two things they walked away going, I did so much this year. It's aligned to something that's valid, and I've got good feedback about where to go next. All right, and then the last practice as far as modeling, we use the SRI protocols. Have you guys heard of that? Just give me a thumbs up or something in the chat. Have y'all ever heard of SRI? All right, I see some head nods. Okay, cool. Okay, you'll love SRI. I've got time, so I'm gonna make sure I use it. SRI is a series of protocols that you can use to manage PLCs better, to introduce people to new concepts, to help understand personality types. There are a ton. Okay, there are a ton. Some of them are light and fun. Some of them will help you analyze an article, a piece of work. There are just so many that you can choose from. Look at them as instructional thinking strategies for adults, but they work with kids too. Okay, so they have a long list of them. I would definitely suggest that you favorite this resource, especially I think I have a PD person that does a lot of PD. This is a great way to get folks out of their seat, moving around. Or if you're digital, because I'm gonna show you how to do this digitally as well, you can take some of these protocols and flip them into a digital environment. Okay, so that SRI is a school reform initiative. It's 100% free. All their resources, rather, 100% free. You can sign up for training, but their resources are free. You can do any of these. And so that is what I pull on often when I need strategies to have participants, PD participants, teachers, coaches, whoever, think through a process. Okay. So I'm going to show you how I took these traditionally face-to-face protocol and I switched it into an online environment. Here's one of them. Okay. I'm sure many of you do this. We analyze data in our districts. And so with the 7 coaches that I work with, it was end of the year and we needed to look at the data of how students and teachers and parents were interacting with digital tools. And so the protocol that I actually used, let me go back and get that protocol for you so you can see it. The protocol that I actually use, the purpose of this protocol is to analyze data, to take it apart, to discuss it from different angles, and then hopefully the goal is, as always, to build a couple of goals based on that analysis. And so this one is called Atlas Looking at Data. We normally sit in a circle and you would look at the data 3 times. You would describe the data. So what do you see? No feelings, no emotions, just literally what do you see? You would describe the data where you would describe any potential nuances that you notice. And then the last one is, what are the implications? 3 rounds, you would discuss it 3 different times. And based on that discussion, you can move into some sort of action. That's essentially the protocol. So the question is now, how do I take that protocol and move it into a digital environment? So here's the example. We took a Pear Deck, and within this Pear Deck, we broke those questions up. And so all of our participants collaborated on one document. They would read the data. They would just tell us what they see on this slide. We would look at it, talk about what do you see, nothing else. We'd go to the next document. We would collaborate. What does the data suggest? I gave them maybe 5 minutes, I would play music in the background, set a timer. All of these are things you would do in face-to-face, but again, we're just moving it to digital. What does the data suggest? We put it on a Pear Deck. All of them are writing their responses. I'm looking at their responses to see how I can guide the conversation. And then we did it a third time with the third part of this protocol. I'd never done this before digitally in a virtual environment, so I was a little nervous about it. But I actually really liked that we were able to take this face-to-face process, move it online, and it still was a good quality experience. Because then they really walked away with decision about whether the data was valid, whether they needed to pull from other places, or if it was valid, what goals can they build from it? So my folks that are, especially my PD people, coaches who are providing a lot of PD, if you want less of the sit and get and more of the let's interact, let's talk, let's build, SRI is a great way to do it. You just have to be creative and make it virtual. So those are some of my modeling practices. And then number 5 is, well, what about the greater coaching community? We have a small team in our district. I know some districts have much larger teams, but I find, and this is coaching period, no matter where you are, I think we get our school, our campus, our district, we don't always expand outside of that. And so within PD, I wanted to create a larger community and help our coaches see the larger community and hear from them. And so what I did is we did what was called the edtech roundtable. I invited educators from other districts, coaches from other districts to participate in an online discussion with us. I'd actually gotten this idea from Region 10, which is the region that is our education agency. And so I went into one of their meetings and they had a similar format. And I was like, oh my goodness, it's so nice to talk to other people who are doing the same work that I'm doing. And so I was like, I got to recreate this, but I don't want coaches doing this after their work hours. I want it to be built in to the PD that we provide. And that's exactly what I did, because I didn't want to have to, maybe they can show up, maybe they can't. So I asked other districts to work with their coaches, communicate with their coaches, and then we all came together and had this discussion together. So here's how it works. We kind of went over the objectives. We talked about the norms. And then we had 3 questions, and we would ask the question. Our 20 to 30 coaches would go into breakout rooms, discuss that question. Then we would come back as a whole group and debrief. We did the same thing for question 2, same thing for question 3. Here were the questions that we asked. How have you been supporting your campuses? What resources have you been doing? You're connecting with other coaches the other way. This is a great opportunity to take ideas from each other and move forward with those ideas. So that was the first question. The second question was, what role has virtual coaching cycles played in your ability to help teachers go deeper with instruction? I thought this was a great way to get them to really talk with other coaches to see what they're doing to virtually coach their teachers. And then the last question was, what kind of plans are you building? What do you hope to really look at moving forward? So those were our 3 questions. And then I'm going to go back to slide 1 because I do want to show you this. During each breakout room, we had a shared Padlet. We had a shared Padlet, and all of our coaches were able to, they can access this Padlet right now. They can go and look at the answers. They can go see if there are resources that were left behind. It just gave us one big community page that we can then interact with moving forward. All right, so those are my 5 tips for supporting instructional coaches. Do I have any questions?
I don't see any in the chat at this time. I do have one if you're ready to take mine.
Oh yeah.
What has been the feedback from your coaches in regard to the change from, you know, coaching in person to virtually?
So the biggest piece of feedback is they want, by the end of the year, they can see its effectiveness, but they want more meat to go with it. Like, we had about 6 to 9 weeks. They needed a little bit more. They're like, we just need a little bit more. We see the language, we see the steps. We need some more to help us move forward. So our plan going forward right now is to actually have them become a Google certified coach, which uses a very similar model. It's 100% free. So if you're a coach or if you're a person that leads coaches, this would be a great way to help your coaches go deeper with the model. That was the biggest piece of feedback that we got, is that we need to go deeper within the context of the model. So that's like our action plan moving forward into this year, is to really take a step back, they got the language, and go deeper with the model itself. It's a great question.
I have a
Gotcha.
question.
Go ahead.
Okay, so it seems like there was maybe some extra responsibilities, not that might not be the best word, but just extra expectations for the coaches to go through this coaching from you. So how did your coaches respond to that in the beginning? I mean, were they on board with it? Did they have buy-in? And if not, how did you express to them the value of this process? You know what I'm saying? To get the most out of it.
Yes. So part of our theme every year and all year is instructional coaching first, training second, all the other things second. So it's really integral to our whole program. Because, and I serve as an instructional coach, so I can say this as an instructional coach. You get on a campus, and if you don't slow down enough, you'll get really distracted from the instructional coaching influencing part, and you'll dive deeper into training, especially if you're an edtech coach, right? And so the big pieces were, we always train coaches. You're trained every month, you're always trained. So it's part of our conditioning. It's in the baseline. And so my recommendation is always, if you haven't been training coaches regularly, train coaches regularly. You can't, at the very end, especially with everything we had going on at the time, turn around and say, okay, now we're going to give you some PD, because they're going, whoa, I've got too much on my plate. So in that respect, we didn't get as much of that, but we also made as much resources as possible. Do it when you can, asynchronous. We gave them, a lot of the stuff that we did, we would have done it in that 1-day training. Well, they had a month, or they had 3 weeks. And so those kind of pieces help with that process of ensuring that they don't feel like, oh my gosh, this is just so much and I just can't, because we were already doing the monthly trainings. It didn't go away. And then I don't want to say we reduced the workload, we stretched the workload. Instead of it being a conversation that day, it's something you could do over the next couple of weeks. That's a great question.
So all of your things like the Pear Deck that you did with them and that kind of thing, those were all asynchronous?
No. So that's a great question. At the end of the year, we have a couple days where we're allowed to work exclusively with them. The last couple of days of their contract. So the Pear Deck would have been part of our live training. So like the last couple of days of the year, we met every day for about an hour to an hour and a half. And that's when I did all my synchronous activities. And then they would have had a checklist of what other things they can do over the next couple of hours. This year, we're starting back doing the same thing. I'm actually meeting twice a day. So we get 3 days with them. and we're doing an hour, hour and a half in the morning and an hour in the evening. Between that time, there's going to be asynchronous activities that they complete. When we meet in the afternoon, we're actually going to, unpack whatever they explored, essentially a digital flipped, like a digital flipped classroom. We'll either unpack, they'll either share out some things they did, they'll work in breakout groups and come back and share out some things. So that's kind of where we're going next. So that's a great question. Any
All
other
right.
questions for me?
There was an, oh, I'm sorry. Let me make sure. Does she have another?
No, I'm good.
Stacy?
Thank you. That's awesome.
Okay, great. So, there was another question that came into the chat from Maureen. Uh, what are some best coaching strategies to encourage reluctant teachers to use digital tools during distance learning?
Ooh, okay. So, um, that's a great question and it's a tough question. But I'm gonna reiterate, it's all about the language. So, how are we gonna get teachers using our language to feel like this is a positive experience as far as using these new digital tools? So that's the first part. Um, and that's why both of the books I mentioned, like they're very good. Um, at helping you dive into what are you going to say to folks to change their mind because they're reluctant because they're scared. So you got to convince them not to be scared anymore, right? It's just fear. So what can you say to them? So I'll give you an example. In the Google Certified Coach, part of their process is talking about what the challenge is. So talk to me about what's the real challenge here. Like if we pull away everything, tell me what your biggest challenge is regarding this process. Okay, so this is the challenge you have. What's the first step you're willing to take to unpack this challenge so it can become from challenge to something you can be proud of? You see how I did that? Really trying to have that conversation with them about like I know you don't want to do it this way, but let's unpack what the real challenge is, and then what's one thing we can do just today? Can we just do a slide deck today? Can we do that? You know what I mean? Like, are you open to just doing a? Okay, so then I'll go into the next part of that cycle. Can we? Okay, I want to do some research and see if I can find some great things about Google Slides to really help you like liven up your Google Slides. Can we meet next week to talk about that? Then you go do your research, you get your slide stuff together, you come back. Okay, I got some great stuff for you. Are you ready to be wowed by these things? And then you do your training and development. So it's the language. It's what are you going to say to them to get them to change their mind?
So we pulled that old school. We pulled the old school Jedi mind trick on them.
Yeah. What is? Tell me what the challenge is. I know you're tired. I know like, I have kids that are 7 and 4. I know your kids are driving you nuts. I know you have all of these challenges in your way. But when we look at working in Pear Deck, tell me what's one challenge you really have that we can focus on today. It has to be. You really have to go in there with the right language to shift to be able to shift their mindset.
Definitely, definitely. I would totally agree with that. Let's see if we have some additional questions here. I don't see any in the chat, and then I don't see any on YouTube or Twitter right now. So, do you have any final thoughts? And also, I know in your book you also give a couple of lessons on. You have a few lessons on helping with just that. Am I
So
correct?
yeah, absolutely. So um, the nature of the book, it talks about 21 lessons that I've learned from the time that I'm gonna tell you the truth. I never thought I'd be doing this work. I thought I was a classroom lifer. I was gonna do my 30 plus years. I was gonna teach kids English, speech when they allowed me to, college and career readiness when they allowed me to, but I was a classroom lifer, right? And so the book is really categorizing like how did I go from, oh, I'm not leaving the classroom, I know this, to let's talk about how to help my colleagues, right? So the biggest lesson that I like to share with other people is the power of hope. No matter what your role is, teacher, principal, assistant principal, district level person, we have to have a sense of hope. It's that hope that's going to drive people to continue to move forward. It's going to be the same hope that got folks through the depression, that got folks through the Jim Crow era, that has pushed people over and over and over and over to keep living, to keep surviving, to keep working. It's our sense of hope. I think that is the biggest thing that's going to keep us moving. And that's one of my lessons I talk about. I feel like it's one of the biggest and most important traits of instructional coach, having a sense of hope that even if a teacher is reluctant, that even if a campus just doesn't want to do it this way or is not excited, your belief in them that they still want to make the difference in the lives of students is going to be what carries them over the mark.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. So I am going to reclaim host at this time, and we're going to continue to move forward here. And let's see. Did you have something else there? Looks like you had something else.
Oh no, nothing for me.
Okay, awesome. So then let's do this. Doing a little bit of navigating here. Uh-oh. Come on, baby. Why won't you move? There we go. All right. So thank you. Let's give Martine a round of applause here for that, without a doubt. And hopefully during this awesome session you had a time to uh, tweet out about and use the hashtag GEG Louisiana and 21 lessons, so you can get your copy. Now this is my copy, okay? This is my copy of the book, but you can get your copy as well, okay? So here we are. Let's keep going. um Next up, now we have changed the title from Zero to Artist. George is coming back next week, but he is actually going to be doing some things regarding equity and making sure that your students see themselves and putting themselves into the picture and into the story. So this will be updated. He's changing that up regarding equity. So that's what we're going to be doing next week. And then the following week, that's not right. Fred will be coming in to do Wakelet. So all of that information is available on the geglouisiana.com website. Okay, that information is available there. The correct information is there. All right. So a few more professional learning opportunities that we have um, coming up. Oh, if you need to get a certificate, that information you can go to or just type in bit.ly slash GEG certificate, and that is where you will be able to get a certificate of attendance for today's session. Okay. Are there any additional questions, any thoughts before? I believe that's the last slide that I have for you. Oh, we definitely want to thank StreamYard, our sponsors here. We also want to thank MyPD 24/7 as well for StreamYard helping us to be able to take this to online now as well, to the YouTube, and we're also right now broadcasting on Twitter as well. but all of so that those people can engage with the content as well. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me. My email information is there on the screen as well. And we will hopefully see all of you next week for another quick session. Martine, that was absolutely awesome. It's not on the, okay, great. I'll take care of that. But we appreciate your time today, Martine. And I'm going to end the broadcast on YouTube and Twitter at this time.